"Steve, we're restructuring the department," said the woman in the center, her voice crisp and rehearsed. "We've decided to outsource your entire division." I nodded slowly, my expression carefully controlled despite the sudden hollowness in my chest. For years at NextGen Technologies, and this was how it ended, a sterile conference room with people who didn't know my name until they read it off a termination list. "Your last day will be 2 weeks from today," continued the man to her right, sliding a folder across the polished table. "This contains information about your severance package and exit procedures." I didn't open it. Instead, I thought about the algorithm, my algorithm, that had transformed their supply chain operations, saved them millions in logistics costs, and propelled NextGen from a struggling mid-tier player to an industry leader. The same algorithm I'd developed during late nights and weekends on my own laptop, using my own resources. "Is there anything else?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. The third executive, who hadn't spoken yet, finally contributed. "We'll need you to complete thorough documentation and transfer your projects before you leave." A small smile crossed my lips before I could stop it. They didn't know. None of them had bothered to read the licensing agreement I'd established when I first implemented my algorithm into their systems. They assumed everything I'd created belonged to them. "Of course," I said, standing up. "I'll make sure everything is appropriately transferred." As I walked back to my desk, passing the rows of colleagues who had no idea what had just happened, I thought about the chaos that would follow in exactly 15 days. The algorithm that had made NextGen millions required regular maintenance and specific calibrations that only I understood. The documentation existed, but it was deliberately incomplete, a protection mechanism I'd built because I'd seen this day coming. I packed my personal items methodically, ignoring the curious glances. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. "Did they do it?" "Yes," I replied. "Time for Plan B." I took one last look at the monitor displaying the algorithm's performance metrics, all in the green, all generating profits for a company that never valued the mind behind them, not yet realizing they'd just cut off their own lifeline. I never set out to be the villain in NextGen's story. My name is Steve Reyes, 38, with a master's in computer science and 15 years of experience building efficiency systems that most people never notice but couldn't live without. Before the termination meeting, I was just another underpaid engineer with an idea too valuable for my pay scale. I joined NextGen 4 years ago when they were hemorrhaging money on logistics. Their tracking systems functioned like separate islands. Inventory management never communicated properly with shipping. Procurement operated on guesswork, and customer deliveries resembled lottery drawings more than scheduled operations. During my interview, I highlighted these inefficiencies. They hired me to help optimize, but optimization wasn't enough. They needed revolution. I proposed a comprehensive solution, but management rejected it as too expensive and too ambitious. That rejection birthed my weekend project. Every Saturday morning, I'd sit at my kitchen table with coffee and code. My apartment became wallpapered with flowcharts and system diagrams. I built the algorithm using my own equipment, my own time, and architectures I'd been developing since graduate school. 3 months later, I had a working prototype, an integrated logistics management system that could predict supply chain disruptions before they happened. I wasn't naive about intellectual property. Before presenting anything, I consulted with Elaine, a college friend turned IP attorney. Together, we drafted a licensing agreement that protected my ownership while allowing NextGen implementation rights. The document clearly stated, I maintained ownership, NextGen received usage rights contingent on my employment, and modifications required my explicit approval. "They'll never read page 3, Elaine warned when I showed her the signed agreement. She was right. The CTO barely skimmed it before signing, too excited by the demo results showing potential 30% cost reductions. The algorithm exceeded even my projections. Within 6 months, NextGen's logistics costs dropped by 42%. Delivery times shortened by half. Customer satisfaction scores rose to record levels. The CEO mentioned our proprietary technology in every earnings call, watching stock prices climb while my salary remained frozen. I requested performance reviews, submitted promotion applications, even directly asked about compensation adjustments. Each time, "We'll revisit next quarter," or "Budgets are tight right now." Meanwhile, my algorithm made the millions. I didn't build it to get rich. I built it because solving impossible problems is what engineers do. But watching executives receive bonuses for visionary leadership, while I couldn't afford to replace my aging car, revealed the company's true values. So I maintained 2 versions of everything, the documentation they had access to, and the complete architecture that lived only on my secure drives. Not out of malice, but self-preservation. I never planned for revenge. I just refused to gift my life's best work to people who saw me as disposable. 3 days after my termination, I sat at a corner table in the cafe across from NextGen's headquarters, laptop open but my attention fixed on the glass tower. Even from here, I could sense the growing disorder. My phone buzzed with a message from Marco, my former team member. "System's acting weird. Missing you already. What are we supposed to do?" I didn't respond. Couldn't. Not yet. The scene took me back to the night I first saw the algorithm work end to end. It was 2 a.m., my apartment lit only by monitor glow, when the simulation completed a full supply chain cycle without a single error. I remember laughing out loud, startling my cat. That breakthrough came after I'd restructured the core predictive engine for the 5th time, something I'd done in my personal workspace, not NextGen systems. A group of NextGen employees exited the building, faces tense. Among them was Diane from accounting, checking her watch repeatedly. The quarterly financial reports were due this week, reports that had become impressively positive thanks to my system's efficiency. Would they still shine without proper maintenance? I recalled the day I'd shown the prototype to my direct manager, Kyle. His eyes widened as he watched the demonstration. "This could change everything," he'd whispered. Later that same day, I'd overheard him in the executive wing. "Wait until you see what my team developed." My team. As if the solution had been a group effort directed by him. That night, I added the first protective measure, authentication protocols that required my specific credentials for core updates. My coffee had grown cold. I ordered another and opened my email. 3 messages from NextGen's IT department requested urgent assistance and documentation clarification. The licensing agreement PDF remained unopened in my sent folder, the agreement that clearly outlined my ownership that I'd attached to every response. 6 months ago, during a company-wide restructuring announcement, I'd noticed my name missing from the critical personnel list. That same evening, the CTO cornered me at the holiday party. "We should discuss centralizing the algorithm's maintenance," he'd said, drink in hand. "Put it under version control on the company servers." I'd smiled, feigning agreement while mentally calculating how quickly they planned to replace me. The next day, I created additional security protocols and off-site backups of my original development environment. Now I watched a delivery truck idle outside NextGen's loading dock, driver gesturing angrily at a warehouse worker. The first visible sign of system breakdown, shipping schedules falling apart without proper oversight. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Is this Steve Reyes? The algorithm engineer?" "Who's asking?" I responded cautiously. "Victor Chun, CTO at Meridian Systems. I've heard about your situation at NextGen. Their loss might be our gain. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities with us?" I looked up at NextGen's gleaming headquarters one more time. Inside those walls, executives were likely huddled in emergency meetings, realizing too late what they'd discarded. "I'm listening," I replied. The pieces were moving into place, faster than even I had anticipated. Not revenge, just the natural consequence of undervaluing what keeps your company alive. 1 week after my termination, NextGen's CTO attempted the first major modification to my algorithm. I knew this not because anyone told me, but because my phone exploded with notifications from the monitoring protocols I'd built, silent watchers that would alert me to unauthorized access attempts. The modifications were clumsy. They were trying to recalibrate the demand forecasting parameters to account for a new product line launch. A straightforward adjustment if you understood the underlying architecture. They didn't. I was midway through my second interview with Meridian Systems when Victor Chen's assistant interrupted us. "Sir, NextGen stock just dropped 12% in the last hour." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Any news?" "Reports of massive shipping delays and inventory discrepancies." I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from NextGen numbers. 3 from Kyle's personal cell. "Something happened?" Victor asked, studying my expression. "They broke it," I replied simply. By evening, the story hit the technology news sites. NextGen faces logistics meltdown. Reports detailed thousands of missing shipments, inventory systems showing negative quantities, and automated procurement placing duplicate orders worth millions. The stock dropped another 8% after hours. At 9:47 p.m., my former desk phone was forwarded to my cell. "Steve, it's Eric, NextGen's newly appointed head of engineering, who'd smiled politely during my termination meeting. We've got a situation. I noticed. The system is, well, it's not just glitching. It's actively making incorrect decisions. We've tried restoring from backups, but the backups contain the same architecture you modified incorrectly." I finished for him. Silence. "Then, can you help us?" I let the question hang. Through my apartment window, I could see the city lights. Somewhere among them, NextGen executives were panicking in emergency meetings. "The licensing agreement clearly states that modifications require my approval," I said finally. "What licensing agreement?" There it was. Confirmation they'd never bothered to read it. The next morning, while NextGen's chaos intensified, I met with my lawyer. We reviewed the documentation, The original agreement, my development logs showing work completed on personal time, the timestamps proving my ownership predated NextGen's implementation. They have no case, she confirmed. But be prepared, they'll try to claim it was work for hire. By afternoon, 3 more calls from NextGen, including one from the CEO herself. I didn't answer. Instead, I accepted Victor's invitation to tour Meridian's headquarters. Unlike NextGen's glass and chrome showpiece, Meridian operated from a renovated industrial building. The engineering department occupied an entire floor, with collaborative spaces and private coding nooks. As we walked, engineers nodded respectfully. They knew who I was. "We followed your work," Victor explained. "Not just the algorithm itself, but how you structured it. We believe in recognizing the minds behind our innovations." My phone vibrated again. A text from Marco. "They're blaming you for sabotage, claiming you built a time bomb into the system. It's getting ugly." I showed Victor the message. "Predictable," he said. "When companies can't admit their mistakes, they find scapegoats." He stopped at a conference room where 5 engineers waited. "This would be your team, if you're interested in a leadership position. We have logistics challenges that could benefit from your expertise." The offer hung in the air, a fresh start with recognition leading my own team. Behind me, my phone lit up with NextGen's latest crisis update, $3.2 million in lost shipments. And counting. The NextGen legal department sent their first cease and desist letter on a Tuesday morning. It demanded I immediately cease all interference with proprietary company systems and return all confidential materials. Fascinating accusations considering I hadn't touched their systems since my termination. I forwarded it to Elaine, who responded with a single laughing emoji before calling. "They're desperate," she said. "This letter contradicts itself 3 times in 2 pages. They're claiming both that you sabotaged the system and that you stole it, which makes no logical sense. What's our counter-move?" I asked, spreading my documentation across my dining table. For years, I'd maintained meticulous records, dated development logs, the original GitHub repository with timestamps predating my NextGen employment, even receipts for the computing resources I'd purchased specifically for algorithm development. We send them a reminder of the licensing agreement they signed, along with notice that they breached it by attempting unauthorized modifications. Then we inform them that per Section 4.2, their usage rights terminated with your employment. Won't they claim it was developed on company time? They might try. That's why I had you keep those development journals and time records. Your documented weekend work, personal equipment purchases, and the technical architecture that clearly evolved from your graduate thesis will make that argument fall apart. I signed the response letter Elaine drafted. It felt oddly liberating, not vengeful, just honest. I wasn't destroying NextGen. I was simply enforcing the agreement they'd ignored. That afternoon, I met Victor at Meridian Systems to discuss terms. Unlike my vague senior engineer title at NextGen, Meridian offered Director of Logistics Innovation, with a salary nearly double my previous compensation and equity in any solutions my team developed. "We've prepared a workspace for your team," Victor said, showing me to a section of the engineering floor. "You'd have 5 senior engineers to start, with budget for 3 more hires. And ownership of my intellectual property remains yours with Meridian licensing implementation rights. We value creators here, Steve. Our success depends on them wanting to stay." Later that evening, NextGen CEO finally called directly. "Mr. Reyes, this has gone far enough. You've made your point." "Have I made a point?" "I wasn't aware I was trying to. The disruption to our operations, you must know what this is costing us. I believe I warned your management about the importance of proper maintenance during my exit interview. What do you want? A consulting contract? Your job back with a raise?" I considered the question honestly. 6 months ago, I might have accepted such an offer. Now it felt insulting. "I want what was agreed to in the licensing contract your company signed. Recognition of my ownership and compensation for your continued use, if you want to continue using it. That's extortion. That's contract law. The documentation has been sent to your legal department." After hanging up, I drafted a detailed transition plan for Meridian, not a replica of NextGen's system, but something better. The core concepts would remain, but with enhanced features I'd conceptualized but never implemented. Predictive maintenance alerts, dynamic rerouting protocols, and supplier reliability scoring. This wasn't about revenge. It was about building something valuable with people who valued me in return. When the phone rang again, it was Marco. "They're looking for someone to blame internally now," he said quietly. "Several of us are updating our resumes." "Meridian's hiring," I replied. "Send me yours first." My first day at Meridian began with a team meeting unlike any I'd experienced at NextGen. Instead of being told what to build, I was asked what we could accomplish together. "The floor is yours, Director Reyes," Victor said, then took a seat among the engineers. 7 faces looked at me expectantly, 5 Meridian veterans plus Marco and Layla, who jumped ship from NextGen the moment I mentioned openings. They weren't just talented, they were curious, the kind of engineers who asked why before how. We're not here to replicate what I built before, I began, sketching on the whiteboard. We're building something better. That morning, NextGen's attorneys delivered a thick envelope of legal threats, claims of trade secret theft, demands for injunctive relief, and vague allegations of computer fraud. Elaine forwarded their filing with her notes in the margins, mostly variations of baseless and contradicted by evidence. I set the legal concerns aside and focused on what mattered, building. Within days, our team established a development framework that incorporated everything I'd learned from my previous algorithm's strengths and limitations. We mapped supply chain vulnerabilities I'd never had resources to address at NextGen, designed resilience protocols for disruptions, and built transparency into every module. 3 weeks in, NextGen's lawsuit hit a critical obstacle when their own records undermined their claims. Their system logs showed my algorithm was implemented 2 days after I'd registered my copyright. Their financial records revealed they'd never paid me for development, only standard salary for implementation support. Their own emails discussed the licensing agreement they now claimed didn't exist. The judge denied their injunction request, leaving NextGen floundering without their operational backbone. They've approached 3 different consulting firms, Marco reported during lunch. All declined after initial assessment. No one wants to reverse engineer something this complex with incomplete documentation. I didn't feel satisfaction at their struggle, only confirmation I'd made the right choice moving forward. By the 6-week mark, our new systems prototype was handling simulated logistics challenges with remarkable efficiency. We called it Atlas, Adaptive Transport and Logistics Allocation System. Unlike my previous creation, this one emerged from collaborative intelligence, each team member contributing critical insights. This prediction module is brilliant, I told Layla, reviewing her code. The cascading failure prevention is exactly what I tried to implement at NextGen, but couldn't get approved. Because here they actually listen to engineers, she replied. The afternoon Victor arranged our first client demonstration, a regional distributor frustrated with their current logistics solution. I received a final communication from NextGen, a settlement offer. They would drop all claims in exchange for a 6-month consulting arrangement to help them transition to a new system. What do you think? Elaine asked when I called. I watched my team preparing for our demonstration, their energy and confidence palpable. Tell them I'm unavailable, I replied. I've already found better opportunities. 6 months after joining Meridian, we launched Atlas to our first major client. I stood at the back of the conference room as our team walked through the demonstration, no longer the solo engineer but the director who'd helped shape their vision. The client's logistics officer leaned forward when the system predicted a supply chain disruption before it appeared in any reporting. That's impossible, he said. How did it know? Layla explained the predictive modeling while I exchanged glances with Victor. We both knew what we were witnessing, not just a successful product launch, but the birth of something revolutionary. By year's end, Atlas had secured 12 enterprise clients. Each implementation strengthened the system's predictive capabilities through our federated learning framework, something I'd conceptualized years ago, but never had support to build. NextGen made headlines again, though not the kind any company wants. Their quarterly earnings showed continued logistics problems, inventory inconsistencies, and declining market share. They eventually purchased an off-the-shelf solution at premium prices, but reports suggested implementation issues persisted. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles. The algorithm had never been about leverage or revenge. It was about creating something valuable and being valued for that creation. On the anniversary of my termination, my team surprised me with a cake decorated with Python code frosting. As we celebrated, I looked around at the workspace we'd built together, walls covered with system diagrams, engineers debating optimal approaches, and screens displaying Atlas managing millions of shipments across continents. Next quarter's projections just came in, Victor said, joining me with 2 champagne glasses. The board approved your proposal for the research division. I accepted the glass, thinking about the journey from that cold conference room to this moment. Not bad for the engineer they thought they could replace, he added. No, I smiled. Not bad at all.